London, 1814. Miss Tabitha Fairchild had long ago mastered the delicate art of appearing perfectly ordinary. Not too beautiful, not too clever, and certainly not too mysterious. Ordinariness was her armor in the treacherous battlefield of London society. "Remember," she whispered to her reflection as her lady's maid arranged her honey-brown curls, "you are simply the orphaned niece of Lord and Lady Winthrop. Nothing more." She touched the silver locket hidden beneath her gown, its familiar weight both comforting and terrifying. For 6 London seasons, Tabitha had maintained this careful performance. At 26, she was perilously close to spinsterhood, precisely as she intended. Marriage meant questions. Questions meant discovery. And discovery meant ruin. "Miss Fairchild," her aunt called through the door. "Do make haste. Lady Harrington's ball begins at 9, and the carriage awaits." "Coming, aunt," Tabitha replied, arranging her features into the pleasant, unmemorable expression she had perfected. Lady Winthrop appraised her niece's appearance with critical eyes. "That blue gown is tolerable, though hardly the height of fashion. Still, for a woman of your advanced years and modest fortune, it will do." Tabitha nodded agreeably. Her aunt never failed to remind her of her dependent position in the household, as though Tabitha herself could ever forget. Yet the Winthrops had shown true kindness in taking her in after her mother's death, despite the scandalous circumstances. "I understand that Prince Regent himself may make an appearance tonight," Lady Winthrop continued as they settled into the carriage. "And where Prinny goes, all of fashionable London follows." "How thrilling," Tabitha murmured, though few things sounded less appealing than drawing the attention of the notoriously libertine royal. Lord Winthrop harumphed from his corner of the carriage. "The man is a profligate spendthrift who cares more for his tailoring than the troubles of his kingdom." "Husband," Lady Winthrop hissed. "Such talk borders on treason." "It borders on truth," he replied, though he lowered his voice. Tabitha smiled faintly. Her uncle's willingness to speak his mind regardless of consequences was a trait she secretly admired, though she dared not emulate it. In her position, honesty was a luxury she could ill afford. The Harrington ballroom blazed with hundreds of candles, the light reflecting off jewels and polished silver. Tabitha took her customary position along the wall, content to observe rather than participate in the elaborate social rituals unfolding before her. "Miss Fairchild." A deep voice interrupted her thoughts. "You appear to be hiding." Tabitha turned to find a tall gentleman regarding her with undisguised interest. His striking blue eyes seemed to look beyond her careful mask, and she felt a momentary flutter of panic. "Sir, you mistake observation for concealment," she replied coolly. "Baron Benedict Zellinger," he introduced himself with a bow. "And I rarely mistake anything, Miss Fairchild." Tabitha cursed inwardly. The Baron's reputation preceded him, a distinguished diplomat recently returned from Vienna, known for his keen intelligence and refusal to suffer fools. Precisely the sort of man she should avoid. "You know my name, yet we have never been introduced," she noted. "How unnervingly efficient your intelligence gathering must be." He laughed, the sound surprisingly warm. "I simply asked Lady Harrington about the intriguing woman who seems determined to blend into the wallpaper despite being the most interesting person in the room." "Then your powers of observation require immediate attention, my lord, for I am thoroughly uninteresting." "On the contrary." His eyes twinkled. "Only truly fascinating people work so diligently to appear ordinary." The orchestra struck up a waltz, and Baron Zellinger extended his hand. "Would you do me the honor?" Everything within Tabitha urged refusal, yet she found herself accepting. As they joined the dancers, she was acutely aware of his hand at her waist, of the curious glances from onlookers, of the danger in drawing attention. "You dance beautifully," he remarked. with the grace of someone who has had exceptional training. Tabitha stiffened. My aunt arranged for dancing masters, as she does for all young ladies in her care. Of course. His tone suggested he believed otherwise. As the music ended, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. The Prince Regent had arrived, resplendent in his finery, surrounded by his usual coterie of sycophants. "Ah, Prinny graces us with his presence," Baron Zellinger murmured. "You speak of His Royal Highness with remarkable familiarity," Tabitha observed. "We were at school together, though he was several years my senior. He remembers me fondly, primarily because I once saved him from a particularly embarrassing situation involving the headmaster's daughter." Before Tabitha could inquire further, the Baron was hailed by the Prince himself. "Zellinger! Come, man, I haven't seen you since Vienna." Tabitha seized the opportunity to retreat to her aunt's side, her heart beating uncomfortably fast. Baron Zellinger saw too much, asked too many questions. She resolved to avoid him for the remainder of the evening. Fate, however, had other plans. Hours later, as Tabitha sought a moment's respite in Lady Harrington's conservatory, she heard footsteps approaching. Ducking behind a large potted palm, she watched as the Prince Regent and Baron Zellinger entered, deep in conversation. "You must help me, Benedict," the Prince was saying. "This search has consumed me for nearly 3 decades. Your Highness, with all due respect, is it wise to continue?" The lady clearly wished to remain hidden. She took something of great value when she fled, the Prince insisted. A royal heirloom, a silver locket with the family crest. Finding it may be the key to locating her child. Tabitha's blood turned to ice. The locket. Her mother's locket. Her locket. "And if you find this child?" Baron Zellinger asked. "What then?" "That depends entirely on the circumstances," the Prince replied. "But I have my reasons, old friend. Will you help me?" "I shall make inquiries," the Baron promised. As they departed, Tabitha remained frozen in place, one hand clutched to her throat where the locket lay hidden beneath her gown. The secret her mother had taken to her grave, the truth of Tabitha's parentage, was suddenly in terrible danger of exposure. That night, sleep eluded her entirely. By morning, Tabitha had made her decision. She must leave London immediately. Her aunt and uncle would be disappointed, perhaps even suspicious, but she would manufacture some tale of a school friend in desperate need. She was halfway through penning a letter to this fictional friend when her lady's maid announced a visitor. "Baron Zellinger requests a moment of your time, miss." Panic fluttered in Tabitha's chest. "Please inform him I am indisposed. I did mention you were engaged in correspondence, miss, but he was most insistent. He claims the matter is of grave importance." With no plausible reason to refuse that wouldn't arouse suspicion, Tabitha reluctantly agreed to receive him in the drawing-room. The Baron stood by the window, his tall figure silhouetted against the morning light. He turned as she entered, and she was struck again by the intensity of his gaze. "Miss Fairchild, forgive the intrusion. What matter could be so urgent, my lord, that it requires an unannounced morning call?" she asked, remaining near the door. "I wish to apologize for my impertinent questions last evening. And to return this." He extended his hand, revealing a small, embroidered handkerchief. "You dropped it during our dance." Tabitha approached cautiously to retrieve it, noting the small TF stitched in the corner. "Thank you. Though this hardly seems cause for such urgency." "Perhaps not." He hesitated. "In truth, I hope to request the pleasure of your company in the park this afternoon. The weather promises to be fine." She should refuse. Every instinct demanded it. Yet something in his expression, earnestness beneath the polished exterior, gave her pause. "Why?" she asked bluntly. His lips quirked in a half-smile. "Because you are the first woman of my acquaintance who seems utterly unimpressed by my title, my connections, or indeed, myself. It's refreshingly humbling." Despite herself, Tabitha laughed. "Your lordship finds humiliation refreshing? How novel." "Not humiliation, Miss Fairchild. Honesty. In my position, it's a rare commodity." The sincerity in his voice touched something in her, and against her better judgment, she agreed to the outing. They walked through Hyde Park that afternoon, Tabitha's maid following at a discreet distance. To her surprise, the Baron proved to be a thoughtful conversationalist, discussing books, music, and art with genuine interest in her opinions. "You have an unusual perspective on Wordsworth," he remarked after one of her observations. "Almost as though you've had extensive education in literature." Tabitha froze momentarily. She had forgotten herself, forgotten to temper her intelligence. "I simply enjoy reading, my lord. And your insights on the political situation in Vienna are equally intriguing for someone who has never traveled abroad." "One need not experience something firsthand to form opinions about it," she replied carefully. "True enough." He glanced sideways at her. "Yet your observations about the Habsburg court were remarkably specific." She changed the subject hastily, cursing her carelessness. She had spent years crafting the persona of Tabitha Fairchild, modest, unremarkable, safely ignorant of worldly matters. Yet in his presence, her true self kept slipping through the cracks. Over the following weeks, despite her determination to maintain distance, Tabitha found herself increasingly in Baron Zellinger's company. He appeared at every event she attended, sought her out for dances, and somehow arranged to be seated near her at dinners. More alarmingly, she found herself looking forward to their encounters. He challenged her intellect, made her laugh, and seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts. For a woman who had spent years carefully ensuring no one looked too closely, it was both terrifying and exhilarating. "You've been seeing quite a lot of Baron Zellinger," her aunt remarked one evening as they returned from a musical soirée. "He has been kind enough to engage me in conversation at social gatherings," Tabitha replied neutrally. "Kind?" Lady Winthrop raised an eyebrow. "My dear, the man is clearly besotted. Half the ton is talking about it." Horror washed over Tabitha. "Surely not." "Indeed. The betting books at White's have odds on when he'll offer for you." Her aunt patted her hand. "I never thought to see you make such an advantageous match at your age. The Baron is wealthy, well-connected, and not entirely displeasing to look upon." "Aunt, you misunderstand. We are merely acquaintances." "Acquaintances don't look at each other the way he looks at you," her uncle interjected from behind his newspaper. "Like a man who's found something precious he feared was lost." Tabitha retired early, her mind in turmoil. Had she truly allowed herself to develop feelings for Baron Zellinger? And worse, had he developed feelings for her? The very thought was catastrophic. Any serious attachment would inevitably lead to questions about her background, her parentage, her mysterious lack of family beyond the Winthrops. And then there was the matter of the prince's search for the locket, her locket. She touched it through her nightgown, feeling its familiar contours. Inside was a miniature portrait of her mother as a young woman, beautiful and carefree before scandal forced her into hiding. The next morning brought a letter from the Baron, requesting her presence at a small gathering at his home that evening. "A few friends for dinner and music," he wrote. Nothing formal. She penned a polite refusal, citing a previous engagement. His response arrived within the hour: "I shall reschedule for tomorrow evening, then. Unless you have engagements every night this week." His persistence both annoyed and pleased her. Reluctantly, she accepted for the following evening. The Baron's townhouse was elegant without ostentation, reflecting its owner's refined taste. To Tabitha's relief, the gathering was indeed small, just 8 guests including herself. The conversation flowed easily, touching on literature, politics, and the latest audits without descending into malicious gossip. After dinner, one of the ladies was prevailed upon to play the pianoforte. As the music filled the room, Baron Zellinger seated himself beside Tabitha. "You seem more at ease here than at larger gatherings," he observed quietly. "Smaller groups allow for meaningful conversation rather than superficial pleasantries," she replied. "Indeed." His eyes held hers. "And meaningful conversation is what I most desire with you, Tabitha." The use of her given name startled her. "Sir, we are not on such familiar terms." "Aren't we?" "After weeks of what I believe to be growing friendship, perhaps even something more." The warmth in his expression made her heart flutter treacherously. "Baron Benedict," he corrected. "And I believe it's time for honesty between us." Alarm coursed through her. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, a footman entered with a message. The Baron read it quickly, his expression darkening. "Forgive me," he said, rising. "An unexpected visitor requires my attention. Please, enjoy the music. I shall return shortly." As he left, Tabitha felt a growing unease. Something in his manner, his reference to honesty, suggested he knew more than he should. She made her excuses to the other guests and slipped into the hallway, intending to summon her carriage. Voices drifted from a partially open door, the Baron's study. She recognized his deep tone, and then, to her horror, the distinctive, slightly slurred speech of the Prince Regent himself. "You're certain it's her?" the Prince was saying. "The resemblance is unmistakable," Benedict replied. "And there are other signs. Her education far exceeds what would be expected of a dependent relative. Her knowledge of European courts. And then there's the matter of her arrival in the Winthrop household shortly after." After Maria's death, the Prince finished, his voice suddenly somber. "Does she wear the locket?" "I cannot say with certainty, Your Highness. She keeps her throat modestly covered, as befits a lady." Tabitha backed away, her worst fears confirmed. Somehow, Benedict had connected her to her mother, and to the Prince. She had to flee, immediately. Returning to the drawing room, she feigned a sudden headache and requested her carriage. By the time Benedict returned to his guests, she was gone. That night, she packed essentials and wrote letters explaining her sudden departure. She would go to her mother's old friend in Scotland, a woman who knew the truth and could be trusted to keep her secret. As dawn broke, she was making final preparations when her maid announced an early caller. "Baron Zellinger insists on seeing you, miss. He seems most distressed." "Tell him I am not at home," Tabitha replied, panic rising. "I'm afraid I've already informed him otherwise," the maid admitted sheepishly. Moments later, Benedict strode into the room, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, as though he had not slept. "You're leaving," he stated, taking in the half-packed trunk. "A family emergency requires my presence elsewhere," she replied stiffly. "How remarkable, since the Winthrops are your only family, and they are currently at breakfast, unaware of any emergency." Tabitha lifted her chin defiantly. "I fail to see how my comings and goings concern you, Baron Benedict," he corrected automatically. "And they concern me greatly, because I believe you are fleeing to avoid me. Or more specifically, to avoid what I may have discovered." Her silence was confirmation enough. He stepped closer. "Tabitha, I know who you are." "You know nothing," she whispered. I know you are the daughter of Maria Fairchild, formerly Lady Maria Conroy, who disappeared from court 27 years ago after a rumoured liaison with the prince." His voice gentled. "And I know you wear her locket, the royal gift that the prince now seeks." Tabitha's hand flew to her throat. "If you know all this, then you understand why I must leave. I will not be a pawn in royal politics or a scandal to titillate the ton." "Is that what you think I want? To expose you?" He looked genuinely hurt. "Tabitha, I've known your identity for weeks. I've said nothing." This revelation stunned her. "Why?" "Because it was not my secret to tell." He took another step closer. "And because I found myself caring far too deeply for the woman behind the secret to risk her happiness." "The prince wishes only to make amends," Benedict interrupted. "He loved your mother, Tabitha. Their relationship was not the tawdry affair society painted it to be. He gave her the locket as a token of genuine affection. If he loved her so dearly, why did she live in poverty and die in obscurity?" Tabitha demanded, years of bitterness surfacing. "Because she refused his help," Benedict replied gently. "Pride, perhaps. Or fear of the consequences for you both if the truth became known. The prince has spent years trying to find her, and now you. To what end? I want nothing from him. He wants to ensure you are provided for, as he could not provide for your mother." Benedict hesitated. "And I believe he wishes to know his daughter." Tabitha sank onto a chair, overwhelmed. "I cannot. Society would never accept, society need never know the full truth," he said. "But I would know it. And I would still." He faltered. "Would still what?" she whispered. "Love you," he finished simply. "As I do now, knowing everything." Tabitha stared at him, searching his face for deceit and finding only sincerity. "You cannot mean that." "I have never meant anything more." He knelt before her. "Tabitha, I fell in love with your quick mind, your quiet strength, your compassionate heart. Learning of your parentage only made me admire you more, for all you've overcome, for the dignity with which you've carried your burden." "And if I refuse to acknowledge the prince? If I choose to remain simply Tabitha Fairchild?" "Then that is who you shall be," he promised. "To the world, and to me. Though I would hope that to me, you might eventually consent to be Baroness Zellinger as well." Tears filled her eyes. "You would still wish to marry me, knowing everything." "I wish to marry you precisely because I know everything," he replied. "Including the parts of yourself you've hidden away for too long." For the first time in years, Tabitha allowed herself to hope, to imagine a life without constant fear of discovery, a life with someone who knew her completely and loved her anyway. "The locket," she said hesitantly. "Does the prince truly just wish its return?" "He wishes for you to have it, as your mother intended." Benedict's eyes were gentle. "But he would like to see it once more, and perhaps, if you are willing, to meet the daughter of the woman he never stopped loving." Slowly, Tabitha reached for the chain around her neck, drawing out the silver locket that had been her most carefully guarded possession. She opened it, revealing the miniature portrait inside. She was beautiful, Benedict said softly. "Yes." Tabitha traced the painted face with her fingertip. "She sacrificed everything to protect me. Including her own happiness, perhaps." He covered her hand with his. "Don't make the same mistake, Tabitha. Don't sacrifice your chance at happiness for fear of the past." In that moment, looking into his earnest eyes, Tabitha felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crumble. For years, she had believed love was a luxury she could not afford, that honesty would lead only to ruin. Yet here was a man offering her both love and acceptance, asking only for her trust in return. I will meet with the prince, she decided. Privately. And afterward, we shall see what the future holds. Benedict's smile was radiant. The future holds whatever we wish it to hold, my love. For the first time, you are truly free to choose. 1 month later, Tabitha stood in the gardens of Carlton House, the silver locket open in her palm. Beside her, the Prince Regent, her father, gazed at the miniature portrait with undisguised emotion. She looks just as I remember, he said softly. And you, my dear, look remarkably like her. So I've been told, Tabitha replied. Their relationship was still tentative, fragile, but no longer burdened by secrets. Across the garden, Benedict waited patiently, giving them privacy for this moment of reconciliation. The sight of him filled Tabitha with warmth. In 2 days' time, she would become his wife in a quiet ceremony attended by a small circle of trusted friends, and, remarkably, the prince himself, though his presence would be explained as a courtesy to Benedict's diplomatic service. "Will you wear the locket for your wedding?" the prince asked. Tabitha smiled. "Yes. Not as a secret any longer, but as a reminder of the past that shaped me." She closed the locket, feeling its familiar weight in her palm. "And as a symbol of hope for the future." "A fitting tribute to your mother," he agreed. "She would be proud of the woman you've become." As they walked toward Benedict, Tabitha felt a profound sense of peace. The secret of her birth, so long a burden, had become simply one facet of her story, a story now filled with possibilities she had never dared to imagine. Benedict extended his hand as she approached, his eyes filled with love. "Ready to go, my dear?" "Yes," Tabitha replied, slipping her hand into his. "I believe I am finally ready for whatever comes next." And as they departed together, the locket rested openly against her throat, no longer a hidden secret, but a cherished part of the remarkable journey that had led her, at last, to love.